Welcome back to the channel, you guys. I hope you're having a great day today. For this week's video, what we're going to do is take our ultra budget $100 Stratocaster copy, and what we're going to do is do some low cost, high return mods. So we're going to try to not spend a lot of money, but really transform the way this guitar feels and sounds. Let's get started. Now, if you guys want to know more about the stock instrument itself and how it compares up against some of my more expensive Strats, check out last week's video where I do like a full rundown of every aspect, good and bad, about this, budget guitar. So I'll link to that above. Check out that video if you missed it. Other than that, let's get started on the mods. All right, you guys, mod number one is going to be replacing this trem system. It looks pretty bad, and I think for not a lot of money, we can upgrade this. So I'm going to give you guys a couple options that I've used in the past to replace 6-screw systems. But we're going to go with the budget option because we want to keep this all, under 200 bucks. The guitar was 100 bucks. Let's add another 100 bucks or so to upgrade this guitar to really make a big difference for not a lot of money. So anyway, what we're going to do is just clip our ground wire. We're going to have to resolder and maybe get a longer one anyway. So we're going to take that off the trem and then just loosen the claw screws here. All right, now that the claw screw is backed off, we should be able to just pull them off. Yeah. There we go. Awesome. So what I'm going to do is just take the whole claw off, remove all these screws, because we're going to replace it with something a little better. Now, obviously, our Strat copy here has 6 screws holding the trem down. Very common on sort of lower end guitars. So what we're going to do is talk about a couple different options for replacement. Now, option 1 for replacing a 6-screw saddle is the Blade Runner. Awesome system, holds tune really well, has great sustain, and feels awesome on the bar. So a huge upgrade. Unfortunately, it's out of our price range for this video. Option number 2 is the Vega trem. So it has, again, 4 screws of the 6, so you don't have to permanently mod your guitar. And it's a very responsive system, really small, so you can actually bend it up. You can see it's actually shallower than the route. So you can really crank it up or go all the way down. So really responsive. Again, it's out of our price range, but if you're looking for something great, it's an awesome system. Now, odds are if you spend $100 on a guitar, you're probably not going to want to spend $150 to $250 just for a new trem system. So we're going to go with something a little bit more practical. Now, in the end, here's what I decided to go with. This is a stock used made in Mexico trem system. So 6 screws, so it should bolt right up. I'm crossing my fingers on that one. But you get bent steel saddles, which is really nice. You get a huge block on this one. This one's labeled PW29 on the block and on the plate. So I don't know if that's going to help anybody, but that's what is labeled. And with everybody upgrading their 6-screw trem systems, these should be easy and plentiful to find online. All right, so let's start by removing the 6 screws. Now, when you compare the differences between the block size and the plate size, it's pretty laughable. If you look at the plate, especially where it bends up and you attach the saddles here on both trem systems, the stock made in Mexico one is like twice the thickness. It's a huge difference. So here's the stock Indio Classic, and then here is the made in Mexico. So the plate itself is way thicker, and then of course the block is like 3 times the mass. So the big question is, will the Fender made in Mexico trem mount right up to the 6 screws on the Indio Classic? Well, let's find out. Absolutely, it's a perfect fit. Now here's something else to consider. This screw came with the Indio Classic, and you can see it's got threading all the way up to the head, and that's really probably what was causing binding when I was diving all the way down. If the trem system's sitting on that threading, it's gonna bind when you bomb. And of course this screw here is a much better option where it's got sort of like the smooth top portion so that the trem can really sit against and really not bind as you use it. So we're gonna use the appropriate screws. I think that's gonna make a big difference as well. All right, let's attach our brand new trem system. Here we go. Now to finish off our budget trem upgrade, I went into my bag of hardware and found a new claw from a project in the past. I'm not sure where it came from, but it feels better than the stock one. And then we've got 3 springs from an American trem system. So the spring rate on these are nice and soft but precise, so I think that's going to make a big difference. And then of course we got the big block, which is awesome. And as you can see, the body on this Indio Classic is full. They're like full width. So this stock trem block does not stick out past, so it's not like an Affinity with a thinner body. So that was nice to know. So it's a full thickness 1 3/4 strat body. So all the stock fender parts looks like they're going to fit perfectly. All right, modification number 1 is in the books, the bent steel saddles with the fender branding, and of course that thick trem plate and massive block really transformed the way this guitar looks. I think it's going to play a little bit better too in terms of tuning stability once I get it all tweaked. Anyway, so I can't imagine, you know, a used trem system off a Mexican Strat costing more than like 20 or 30 bucks, especially if it's used. So anyway, that I think is going to be a huge upgrade for this guitar. Now, if you saw last week's video, I think you know I want to upgrade the electronics and the pickups. I thought they sounded pretty good, but I think something a little higher quality will give, you know, the assurance that it's going to last long term. So if money was no object, I definitely would go with the old Obsidian wire solderless kit again. I've used these guys on a ton of builds. I'll link to it in the video description. It's going to be out of the price range for this particular mod, but it makes swapping super easy because there's no soldering. So love that kit, but it's out of our price range for today's build. Now the stock parts on this baby are pretty much equivalent to a Squire, so we don't want to waste our time putting Squire parts in here. It's going to be a waste of time and money. American parts are definitely off the table, too expensive, even the used ones. So I think the sweet spot again are going to be made in Mexico parts, and if you can find them used, even better. Now, I disconnected that ground wire so I can pull it right out this time. And as you guys can see, it's all unbranded, kind of like really low budget parts. So what we're going to do is unsolder these 2 wires from the output jack right there. And then I'm going to compare this up against our new pickguard. So as I mentioned previously, I think used made in Mexico parts are really going to be the sweet spot for this mod. So here we go. We've got a full used made in Mexico pickguard with shielding on it. Made in Mexico pickups, full-size pots, and of course the rotary fender switch. There we go. So there it is. And then in comparison to the Indio Classic, we don't get shielding, small dime-sized unbranded pots, rectangle switch, and of course those cheaper style pickups. So I think the Made in Mexico part is going to be a huge upgrade. So we're going to slap it in. And of course, everybody with a Made in Mexico guitar wants to upgrade to American parts or Seymour Duncan's or something like that. So there should be lots of these out here, you know, that you can find on eBay or Amazon used. Now, as you guys can see, it's a swimming pool route on the Indio Classic, which is awesome. So if you guys wanted to use a humbucker single or 2 humbuckers or humbucker single humbucker, it's all ready to rock, which is actually pretty cool. And of course, it's got these deeper routed channels here. So there you go. It's ready to go for those long screws required for a humbucker. You shouldn't have to, you know, drill, mod, anything. All you need is the appropriate pickguard and you'd be ready to rock. All right, so let's take our Made in Mexico pickguard and slap it into the Indio Classic. Here we go. Oh, shoot, it's so close, you guys. Okay. So we've run into our first problem. Right here, it does not slip past the trem. So it's sitting on top of the trem. We can't shift the trem at all. Oh, that's so close though. Okay, so we've got 2 options. First of all, what we could do is just take my Dremel tool and take like 1/8 of an inch off this neck pocket right here, or the neck cutout, and then slip it underneath the fingerboard. That'll enable us to slide forward, you know, whatever, 1/8 of an inch here, and I think that would give us enough clearance. So that's definitely one option that we could do. It would all be hidden, even if, you know, it's not a perfect job, it will all be hidden underneath the fingerboard here. As you guys can see, it slides up under because it's got the 22nd fret and a little bit of that lip. So that'll all be hidden, so I definitely could do that. The other option is just simply to swap parts, which is really easy to do. You don't have to unsolder or anything. All you have to do is pop the knobs and switches out, unscrew them, unscrew the pickups, and put our Made in Mexico parts in this stock guard. So no problems. Either way we can make it work. I just need to decide what I want to do. All right, just for fun, I think I'm going to try to use my Dremel. So I'm just going to take a marker here, just so I know I don't go too far, and put about 1/8 of an inch all the way along. And then I'll grab my Dremel, take the pickguard back that far, and see if that gives us enough clearance. All right, I'll be back. All right, you guys, I am back, and as you can see, I've removed some of the material from the neck pocket on the pickguard. Let's try it out. I think it's gonna work this time if I can tuck those wires up. There we go. So, nice fit on the pickguard. Now, I would recommend just swapping the parts over to the stock guard because of, obviously, we had to use the Dremel tool, and not all the holes are lining up. There's 3 or 4 holes that line up, and then a few that don't. So I'm gonna have to do some drilling. So I'm just doing that for fun. Obviously, it's a much better idea just to swap the parts into the stock guard, bolt it in, and off you go. All right, so what I'm gonna do is anchor the pickguard down using the holes that line up, and then go in behind with the drill and drill out the rest of the holes so that we can anchor the pickguard nice and firmly. All right, now that we've got everything ready to rock, what we need to do is solder in our ground wire on the back of the trem claw here, and then 2 wires to the output jack. So 3 connections we need to solder up. Other than that, we should be ready to go. Okay, and finally, let's do our output jack here. Well, there we go. All right, you guys, we're making some great progress here. So we've got our output jack soldered up. We've got the ground wire soldered up. So we can grab our screws. We're going to attach the pickguard and the output jack, and away we go. Okay, we're doing great so far. We've got our trem system bolted right up. No problems there. Pickguard didn't quite fit, but if you used the stock pickguard, you'd be totally fine. So we've got our Made in Mexico pots, switches, pickguard, and pickups. So I think that's going to sound awesome. I think that's going to be a big upgrade. What we need to move on next, and really what is most important about this guitar, is getting new tuning machines. I think the rest of the parts probably would be okay. Definitely we upgraded them, but the tuning machines have to go. They're really bad. All right, you guys, now here's our tuning machines. I need to pull them apart and see if they're a 10mm hole, because what I have here is a giant bag of leftover Fender tuning machines. So there's probably 2 or 3 sets in there. So we're gonna try to make that work. Now, on the back side, I can tell we're gonna have to do something, because these are all retained with sort of like angle brackets and screws along there. So if I find a set of tuning machines that I think will just drop in without any modifications, check in the video description. I'll try to track down a set, and you guys, that way it's just gonna be like a bolt-on affair. Because the Fender tuning machines will not just bolt on without modification, because they have these 2 retaining pins. So that stops the tuning machine from twisting and holds it perfectly still. So we're gonna have to do some modifications to get these Fender tuning machines onto this guitar. So step 1, let's just remove all the screws holding the tuning machines in place. Just a small Phillips head screw, and off we go. Now with the screws removed off the back, all we need to do is take our socket and remove the nut. So let's do that, and the tuning machine should drop right out. All right, so here's the moment of truth. Let's see if our Fender tuning machine is going to fit. Yes, perfect. So these are 10mm holes, which means a lot of aftermarket tuning machines will fit. Now, if we were going for a high-end build, something like these Hipshot tuners would be awesome. They come with these universal mounting plates, so they cover up any old holes and just give a really clean look. Likewise, the Graphtec ratio tuners I've used on a few builds, they're absolutely fantastic as well. Unfortunately, both of these sets are out of our budget. Okay, while we have our headstock clean, I'm gonna take the Indio Classic off the headstock, mostly because I don't like the font of the Indio, and Classic is basically admitting that you ripped off a classic design. So I'm gonna take that off. Obviously that's personal choice, but here we go. I'm gonna use 150 grit just to kind of take it down and then smooth it out with some lighter grit. So after about 30 seconds, we basically have it fully removed. It's really easy to do. And now what I want to do is just sort of even it out, make sure it's all about the same, and then I'll move to some lighter grit. Now I'll just buff it out with a little steel wool. There we go. In 2 minutes, we have a perfectly clean and beautiful headstock. All right, you guys, it's time to install our Fender tuning machines. Now these obviously are not going to bolt right up, which is a shame, but we're going to try to make do. Because this is a budget build, we're just going to be using used parts and what's on hand. So I am going to have to take some wood filler and fill in the old screw holes which is a pain in the butt, but that's okay. So what I'm going to try to do is line up these tuning machines, tighten them with the top nut collars, and hopefully it's going to leave some indentations in the headstock. That way I'll know exactly where to drill for the 2 pins. All right, you guys, what we want to do is tighten up the tuning machines just ever so slightly so that they can still be moved, because we're going to need to straighten them and line them up, and then I'm going to cinch them down once they're straight, and hopefully they'll leave those indentation marks. So we need our straight edge for sure. Yeah. Although they're close, they weren't quite right, and the straight edge is really the only way to do it, to make sure, because you don't want to screw this one up. You want this to be like perfect. That is looking really good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is tighten them a little bit further on the front, because they will shift again, and then check, and then I'm going to do, oops, my final tightening. So here we go. I'm just going to cinch them down a little bit more, just so that they don't really shift easily. Okay, and then let's double check with our straight edge again. So we'll flip her over, grab our straight edge, and there's been a little bit of shifting, not too bad. That actually looks really good. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now, do our final tightening, and hopefully those 2 pins will leave a mark, and then we'll do our drilling. I have to say that worked fantastically well. I can see exactly where I need to drill for those 2 pins. That worked really, really good. I was a little skeptical, but man, there you go. We've got all the spots we need to drill, and you know the tuning machines are going to be exactly straight. Now it feels absolutely amazing to have proper Fender tuning machines on here. Very, very pumped about that. That's going to make an absolutely huge difference to the guitar. So there we go. So there's other mods I'd like to do, but for now I think what we're going to do is string it up and do some before and after, because I recorded some before clips, obviously, so we could test out some of these mods and see what the differences are. So here are my final thoughts on the old Indio Classic. Well, first of all, adding about $100 more of used Fender hardware really did make a huge difference in terms of the playing experience. So normally, you know, the 6-screw trem system from Fender, I would get rid of it, but you know, adding it to our $100 guitar really did make a positive difference. So it feels a lot better to play. I think the American Springs helped in the back there too, and just everything feels more precise. And the pickups, hey, I've been using them for years. I like them. They're high output and usually high hum, but that's just part and parcel of those pickups. And of course, the Fender tuning machines turned out so awesome. It worked really well to install them. I wasn't sure how that was going to go. I'm very, very happy that they're here. So strings are still breaking in, but I think it sounds great, and it's still well below like a used made in Mexico. At least here where I live, Mexican standard, like the old model, a really good deal is like $350, more likely $400 to $450. And we are well below that. So definitely higher quality now than a stock Squire for about the same price, and well below made in Mexico with all the same parts. I hope you guys enjoyed this mod video. Hopefully it gave you guys some ideas of what you can do to your entry-level guitars to take them up to that next level without spending a ton of cash. If you guys enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking right here. The rest of my information will be in the video description or on the screen right now. You can check out the t-shirt store, the tab store. Other than that, have an awesome week, you guys. We'll see you next time with a new video.